Had if you could shield your brain from stress with a simple 60-second exercise? And what if this had nothing to do with wishful thinking or some empty motivational quote you saw on Instagram? We're not talking about pretending you're happy. We're talking about a targeted, neurologically proven technique that can fundamentally change how your brain responds to pressure. Think about the last time you were truly, deeply stressed. A high-stakes presentation, a difficult conversation, an exam that felt like it would determine your future. You know that feeling, right? The racing heart, the foggy brain, the sense that your own mind is working against you. Now imagine you could install a kind of protective firewall in your brain, a mental buffer that keeps your sense of self-worth solid and your performance high, even when the world is throwing its worst at you. His isn't science fiction. This is the power of a specific kind of affirmation, and today, we're going to break down the secret behind why it works. We'll look at the neurological proof, showing you exactly what happens inside your brain when you practice this simple exercise. By the end of this, you won't just understand the science, you'll have a practical, actionable tool to hack your brain's stress response, build resilience, and unlock a new level of performance. This is the secret to taking the driver's seat in your own mind. Before we get to the solution, we have to understand the problem. And the problem is stress. Not just the idea of it, but the real, physical experience of it. It's a universal human experience, an invisible wall we all slam into from time to time. But what is actually happening when we feel that intense pressure? Why does it feel so completely debilitating? Let's get specific. Imagine you're a student walking into a final exam. You've studied for weeks, you know the material, but as you sit down, a wave of panic hits. Your palms get sweaty, your heart is hammering against your ribs, and suddenly, the formulas you knew an hour ago feel like a distant memory. Your mind, which should be your greatest ally, has become a scrambled mess of anxiety and self-doubt. It feels like a betrayal, or maybe you're a professional. You're about to give the most important presentation of your career. The clients are in the room, your boss is watching, everything is on the line. You step up to the podium and your throat just closes up. The words you rehearsed 100 times are stuck. You start hearing that little voice in your head whispering, "You're going to fail. They're all going to see you're a fraud." That voice gets louder and louder until it's all you can hear. Your performance tanks, not because you weren't prepared, but because your own brain sabotaged you. This isn't a failure of character. It's a failure of regulation. It's biology. When your brain perceives a threat, whether it's a saber-toothed tiger or a critical audience, it triggers a cascade of responses. This is the famous fight-or-flight mode. Your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, goes into overdrive and signals the release of stress hormones, especially cortisol. Cortisol is useful in short bursts. It gives you that jolt of energy to run from danger. But when you're sitting in an exam or standing at a podium, there's nowhere to run. So that cortisol just floods your system. It messes with the function of your prefrontal cortex, the sophisticated, rational part of your brain responsible for things like problem solving, emotional regulation, and working memory. You know, the exact things you need to excel. So the foggy thinking, that's cortisol interfering with your memory. The emotional spiral of self-doubt, that's your prefrontal cortex, your center of self-control, being taken offline by the more primitive emotional parts of your brain. In these moments, stress isn't just a feeling, it's a cognitive impairment. It's a biological state that literally makes you less intelligent, less capable, and less you. The real danger, though, is when this becomes chronic. When the threats aren't just single events, but a constant drip feed of daily pressures from work, money, or social anxiety. This chronic stress creates what we can think of as negative, mental highways. Your brain loves efficiency, so if you constantly worry about not being good enough, it builds a well-paved multi-lane superhighway straight to that thought. Every time a new stressor pops up, your mind automatically takes the familiar route, reinforcing the negative pattern. Over time, these pathways get so ingrained they feel like the truth. The thought, "I'm not good enough," stops being a reaction and starts feeling like a core part of your identity. This is the invisible wall of stress. It's a prison built brick by brick with your own recurring thoughts, reinforced by a biological process that was designed to protect you but is now holding you captive. And we've all been told to just think positive, but that's like trying to stop a runaway train with a handful of confetti. It's useless against the biological force of chronic stress. Why? Because platitudes don't address the root of the problem. They don't give your brain a different road to take. To truly break free, you don't need platitudes. You need a tool. You need a way to build a new road. So we're stuck in these neurological ruts of stress and self-doubt. It feels automatic, uncontrollable. But what if it wasn't? What if you could consciously, deliberately, build a brand new 6-lane superhighway in your mind, leading to feelings of competence and resilience? What if, when faced with a threat, your brain had an alternate route, a path so appealing that it could bypass the old, negative circuitry altogether? This is where we get to the core of this video, and it's so important to understand that this is not the vague, positive thinking you've heard about a million times. This is something far more precise. This is the science of self-affirmation theory. The secret isn't some mystical law of the universe. The secret is that your brain has a built-in system for managing your sense of self, and you can learn to activate it on command. Self-affirmation theory says that we all have a fundamental need to see ourselves as good, competent, and moral people. When that sense of self is threatened by a bad grade, a critical comment, a failure, our defenses go up and we feel stress. But, and this is the revolutionary part, the theory suggests this system is flexible. If you can bolster your sense of self in one area, it creates a buffer that protects you from threats in a completely different area. Let me explain it another way. Imagine your self-worth as a big building with many support pillars. Each pillar represents something important to you: your career, your intelligence, your role as a parent, your creativity, your sense of humor. Now, imagine a high-stakes presentation at work as a direct attack on the career pillar. If that's the only pillar you're focused on, the attack feels catastrophic. The whole building of your self-worth feels like it's about to crumble. But what if right before that presentation, you took 60 seconds to consciously reinforce another pillar? What if you took a moment to reflect on your role as a kind and supportive friend? You're not even thinking about the presentation. You are focusing on a completely unrelated but deeply held core value. By doing this, you're reminding your entire internal system that your identity is supported by many strong pillars. The threat to that one pillar, your career performance, suddenly seems much less devastating. It doesn't have the power to bring the whole structure down. You've broadened your perspective and reaffirmed your global self-worth, making the specific threat feel smaller and more manageable. This is the buffer. It's an act of psychological resilience that has tangible, measurable effects inside your brain. So we are moving away from fighting negative thoughts one by one. That's an exhausting, losing battle. Instead, we're proactively building a foundation of global self-worth, which makes the negative thoughts lose their power. We aren't just changing our minds. We're changing the very neurological landscape our thoughts operate on. Okay, so this is the why behind this powerful technique. To really trust this brain hack, you need to know it's not based on anecdotes. It's built on a solid foundation of research. So let's put on our lab coats for a minute and break down self-affirmation theory. First, and this is the most critical distinction, scientific self-affirmation is not the same as chanting generic positive affirmations. There's a world of difference between looking in the mirror and saying, "I am successful," and what we're describing. In fact, research shows that for people with low self-esteem, repeating positive statements they don't truly believe can actually make them feel worse. It creates cognitive dissonance, where your brain basically calls you a liar. This internal conflict increases stress. It doesn't reduce it. Scientific self-affirmation, developed by researchers like Claude Steele, avoids this trap. It's not about making grand, unbelievable statements. Instead, it is the process of reflecting on your core values. These are the principles that define who you are, completely independent of any single situation. Think about things like your relationship with your family, your creativity, your sense of humor, your kindness, or your love of learning. The actual exercise used in many landmark studies is disarmingly simple. Participants get a list of values, pick one or two that are most important to them, and then spend a few minutes writing about why that value is important and a time they demonstrated it. That's it. It's not about convincing yourself you're something you're not. It's about reminding yourself of who you already are at your core. So how does this work? First, it broadens your perspective. Like we talked about with the building of self-worth analogy, a threat feels all-consuming when your perspective is narrow. A bad test score isn't just a bad grade, it's an indictment of your entire being. Self-affirmation breaks this tunnel vision. By reflecting on your value of being a loyal friend, you are zooming out. You're reminding your brain that your identity is vast and multifaceted. The threat seen from this broader perspective shrinks. It becomes one data point about your performance, not a final judgment on your worth. The second mechanism is buffering against defensive reactions. When we feel attacked, our natural response is to get defensive. We dismiss the information. That test was unfair. Attack the source. That professor is an idiot. Or disengage. I don't even care about this subject. These defenses protect our ego in the short term, but they're terrible for long-term growth. Self-affirmation short-circuits this. Because your overall sense of self-worth has been secured, you're in a much stronger position to absorb the threatening information without crumbling. You can look at the bad grade and think, okay, I didn't do well here. That doesn't mean I'm a bad person, because my worth is also tied to my creativity and my relationships. So, what can I learn from this? You become more open to feedback and more capable of learning. The third and perhaps most profound mechanism is restoring psychological resources. Chronic stress, as we established, eats up your cognitive resources, your focus, your memory, your problem-solving ability. It's like trying to run complex software on a computer with 1,000 programs running in the background. Self-affirmation acts like a system reboot. By affirming your core values, you reduce the perceived threat. This calms the brain's alarm system, which in turn frees up those precious cognitive resources. Studies have shown this in stunning ways. In one experiment, participants under high chronic stress had to do complex problem-solving tasks. The stressed-out people who did not do a self-affirmation performed way worse than their low-stress peers. But the high-stress people who did a brief self-affirmation exercise first, they performed just as well as the low-stress group. The affirmation had effectively eliminated the performance gap caused by stress. This shows self-affirmation isn't just about feeling better, it's about thinking better. So it's a precise value-based intervention that broadens your self-concept, reduces defensiveness, and restores the cognitive resources that stress depletes. It shifts your focus from, am I good enough right now, to, I am a person of value, period. This is where it gets really cool. For decades, self-affirmation theory was just a psychological model. But now, with tech like fMRI, we can literally watch what happens in the brain during self-affirmation. And what scientists have found is undeniable proof for why this technique is so effective. When you engage in this specific value-based affirmation, you activate a critical network in your brain related to self-processing and reward. Two regions in particular light up like a Christmas tree. The first is the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, or VMPFC. You can think of the VMPFC as the me center of your brain. It's right behind your forehead, and it fires up when you think about yourself, your traits, your goals, your personal story. It's the hub for assigning personal value and significance to things. When you reflect on a value that is truly important to you, you are directly engaging this region. Why does that matter? The VMPFC acts like a brake on the amygdala, the brain's alarm center. When the VMPFC is highly active, it can dial down the fear and stress response from the amygdala. So, when you do a self-affirmation, you're preloading the part of your brain that calms you down. You're firing up the very neural circuit that says, it's okay, stand down the alarm. The second brain region that sparks to life is the ventral striatum. This is a core part of the brain's reward circuitry. It's the same area that activates when you eat delicious food, get a bonus, or receive a compliment. It's associated with pleasure, motivation, and positive feelings. This finding is a game changer. It shows that when you reflect on your core values, your brain literally processes it as a reward. It's like giving yourself a small, internal hit of dopamine. This isn't just about logically understanding your worth. It's about feeling your worth on a fundamental neurochemical level. Let's go back to our mental highways analogy. The negative thought, "I'm going to fail," is a deep, muddy rut. Stress is a rainstorm, making that rut the path of least resistance. A generic positive thought, "I am a winner," is like trying to drive over the rut. Your wheels just spin. A scientific, value-based self-affirmation doesn't drive over the rut. It builds a completely new road. Activating the VMPFC and ventral striatum is like laying down fresh asphalt for a new neural pathway. This new highway is labeled, "I am a kind person," or "I am a creative individual." When the storm of stress hits, your thoughts now have an attractive alternative route. The more you practice this, the more you strengthen this new pathway. This is neuroplasticity. In action, the brain's ability to rewire itself. Every time you do a value affirmation, you are physically reinforcing that new road, making it wider and smoother. Over time, this can become your brain's default route, while the old negative rut fades from disuse. You are literally rewiring your brain to be more resilient. fMRI studies provide concrete evidence for this. In one, sedentary adults were given messages about the dangers of their lifestyle, a threatening message. The participants who did a self-affirmation exercise first showed way more activation in their VMPFC while reading the messages. What's more, that brain activity predicted actual behavior change. Those individuals were less sedentary in the month that followed. By affirming their values, they became more open to the threat and more motivated to act. The evidence is clear. Self-affirmation is a neurological intervention. It engages the brain's self-processing and reward systems, calms the threat detection circuits, and physically rewires your neural pathways for resilience. It's a hack, in the best sense of the word, using a deep understanding of a system to make it work better for you. Understanding the science is great, but true power comes from application. So, how do you turn this incredible neurological tool into a practical, everyday shield against stress? This is the how-to part. The process is simple, and that's its strength. It's designed to be done anywhere, anytime. It breaks down into 3 steps. Step 1. Identify your core values. This is the foundation. Remember, this isn't about inventing positive traits. It's about uncovering what's already true and important to you. So take a piece of paper or open a note on your phone. Here's a list to get you started. Read through them and see which ones just feel like you. Creativity, kindness and compassion, relationships with friends and family, sense of humor, honesty and integrity, love of learning, curiosity, spirituality or faith, contribution to the community, independence, perseverance, appreciation of beauty and nature, leadership. From this list or your own ideas, choose the top 3 to 5 values that are most central to your identity. These are your pillars. They are the bedrock of your self-worth. Write them down. This is your personal affirmation arsenal. Step 2. Craft your affirmation moment. Now, turn those values into a quick, potent exercise. For each of your chosen values, you're going to answer 2 simple questions. Let's use kindness and compassion as an example. 1. Why is this value important to me? You might think or write, kindness matters to me because it's how I want to show up in the world. It makes me feel connected to people. It reminds me that we're all just trying our best. And I believe compassion can make someone's entire day better. Also think of a specific time I embodied this value. Now, bring a real memory to mind. Don't just think I'm a kind person. Relive a specific moment. For instance, I remember last week when my coworker was totally overwhelmed. I had my own work, but I could see they were drowning. I stopped, went over, and spent 20 minutes helping them get organized. I remember the look of relief on their face. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about my own deadlines. I was just helping another person. That felt really true to who I am. See the difference? You're not just stating a value. You're connecting it to your personal philosophy and anchoring it in a real-life experience. This is what brings the affirmation to life in your brain. Step 3. Deploy your shield before the battle. This is the final and most crucial step: timing. The research is clear that self-affirmation is most effective when it's deployed before you face a threat. It's a preventative measure. You load the buffer before the stress hits. So, how does this look in practice? Before a big presentation. 5 minutes before you go on, find a quiet space, close your eyes. Pick one of your core values, let's say creativity. Rethink your affirmation moment for creativity. Relive that memory of making something you were proud of. Spend just 60 to 90 seconds fully immersed in that thought. You're not thinking about the presentation. You are reinforcing a different, stable part of your identity. Now walk into that room with your neurological shield active. Before an exam. While walking to the classroom or sitting at your desk, ignore the frantic last-minute cramming. Take a deep breath and pick a value. Maybe it's perseverance. Think about a time you overcame a major challenge, something totally unrelated to school. Feel the pride and strength from that memory. You are reminding your brain that you are a person who gets through hard things. Before a difficult conversation, you have to give someone negative feedback and your heart is pounding. Before you pick up the phone, affirm a value like honesty and integrity. Remind yourself that you're doing this because you believe in being direct but fair, and that this value is more important than the temporary discomfort. This reframes the act from one of confrontation to one of integrity. This is a practice, a mental hygiene routine. The more you do it, the stronger those new neural pathways become. You are training your brain to have a new automatic response to stress. From Section 6, the evidence, beyond the lab. The brain scans are compelling, but does this simple exercise actually work in the real world? The answer from a huge body of research is a resounding yes. Let's start with academic achievement. One of the most famous series of studies took place in middle schools, targeting stereotype threat, the fear that minority students would confirm negative stereotypes about their group's academic abilities. This fear alone is enough to impair performance. In these studies, students did a brief 15-minute writing exercise a few times a year. One group wrote about their most important values, like friends or music. The control group wrote about an unimportant value. The results were astonishing. The minority students who did the self-affirmation saw their grades improve so much that it cut the achievement gap with their white peers by 40%. And this wasn't a fluke. The positive impact was sometimes still detectable years later. Now let's look at unhealthy behaviors. People get defensive about their bad habits. Smokers tune out anti-smoking ads. Researchers wanted to see if self-affirmation could break down that defensive wall. In one study, coffee drinkers were shown a threatening article about the dangers of high caffeine consumption. Before reading it, half of them affirmed a core value. The result? The affirmed participants saw themselves as more at risk and had a greater intention to reduce their caffeine intake. By shoring up their self-worth first, they were able to accept the threatening information. Finally, let's look at cause performance under pressure. We already discussed the study where affirmations eliminated the problem-solving deficit for people under chronic stress. Another study looked at how feeling powerless affects your thinking. They used the Stroop task, where you have to name the color of a word while ignoring the word itself. It requires intense focus. The results showed that low-power participants who did not affirm themselves made way more errors. But the low-power participants who did a quick self-affirmation performed just as well as the high-power group. The affirmation completely buffered their cognitive performance from the negative effects of feeling powerless. All these studies show that what we see in the brain scans translates into meaningful, real-world outcomes. This isn't a trick to feel better for a few minutes. It's a tool that helps you learn more effectively, live healthier, and perform at your peak when it counts. If this look into the neuroscience of your own brain is giving you a new tool for your mental toolkit, take a moment to subscribe and click the bell. We break down the science of a better life every week, and we'd love to have you as part of the community. Section 7. The Fine Print. How to use this like a pro now. It's important to be real. Self-affirmation is a powerful tool, but it's not a magic wand. There are a few things to keep in mind to make sure you're using it effectively. First, as we've stressed, authenticity is everything. The whole thing works because you're affirming a core, authentic value. If the affirmation feels fake, it won't work. If you're not a particularly creative person, affirming creativity might even make you feel like an imposter. It has to be grounded in the truth of who you already are. Second, self-affirmation is not a substitute for therapy. For anyone dealing with deep-seated negative self-beliefs, clinical depression, anxiety disorders, or trauma, simply affirming a value is not enough. These conditions require professional intervention. Self-affirmation can be a helpful practice alongside therapy, but it is not a replacement for it. If you are struggling, please seek help from a qualified professional. Third, there's a risk of using this for avoidance. The goal of self-affirmation is to reduce defensiveness so you can face a problem more effectively, not to feel so good that you ignore the problem. If you get negative feedback at work, the point is to affirm your worth so you can analyze the feedback constructively, not to say, well, I'm a good friend, so I don't need to listen to my boss. It's a tool for engagement, not blissful ignorance. So what have we learned? We've journeyed into the brain to find a remarkable truth. You have more control over your stress response than you ever thought. That feeling of being overwhelmed under pressure isn't a personal failing. It's a biological reaction that can be managed. We've broken down the affirmation secret, discovering it's not about empty slogans, but about connecting with your authentic core values. This simple act serves as a neurological shield, activating the self-processing and valuation centers of your brain, calming your internal alarm system and freeing up your cognitive resources. You have the power to build new neural highways to rewire your brain to be more resilient. It's not magic, it's neuroscience. The next time you feel that wave of stress rising before a challenge, remember this. Don't fight the wave. Build a seawall. Take 60 seconds. Connect with a value that is undeniably you. Your challenge is this. Start today. Identify your core values. And the next time you face a stressful situation, deploy your shield. What is one core value you are going to affirm this week? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'd love to hear what matters most to you. Thanks for watching.